Hello, Alabama fans. You've got Tim Watts and Andrew Bone, and we're here with the BamaOnLine.com post-game show. We hope you can jump in with your comments. We're glad to have you. Much better show than last week. Well, I don't know if the show's better, but the outcome was better. More fun things to talk about. And the game just ended a moment ago. So, Andrew, who's freshly shorn, is that the right word? Shorn? Shaven?
Shaved.
Looks fantastic. We're going to get this
Yeah.
thing going. We're waiting on Jimmy Stein to come in. And Andrew, what are your thoughts? Wisconsin, does that have just a totally different feel to you? And it's a good thing, kind of like going to Penn State that year, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you want to go into a road game environment and not really, I guess be worried with the last 5 minutes of the game. We've seen a lot of tough road games for Alabama. It seems like more tough road games through the last couple of years than ever before. But Alabama, went to Wisconsin. They were able to do what they needed to do, and you know, I think from the moment the game started, you saw the horses on both sides of the fence, and you kind of knew, this is probably going to be a long game for Wisconsin, especially when Tyler Van Dyke got hurt on that first series of the game. It was going to be a long day for them. But then once Milroe and that rushing attack got going, thought that was that was dangerous. That was lethal. I thought they used Milroe extremely well, in that run game, and he made some big plays. But obviously the turnovers, in my opinion, were probably the keys to the game. Alabama needed those turnovers to get that momentum, and they did a great job of capitalizing.
Yeah, we're going to welcome in Jimmy Stein right now, and we're going to have Joseph Hastings later in the show swapping out with Jimmy. Jimmy, who's casually late, and I think Jimmy's died and went to heaven. I see the glow right now. It's amazing. The aura is fantastic. Jimmy, how are you doing?
Well, glowing after the big win, of course, and that's what we got going on here. But I was really impressed, overall with the play at the line of scrimmage. I thought that was the real key to the game in terms of how did Alabama win by so many points. They're just much better at the line of scrimmage than Wisconsin, and I don't think we realize today how nice that win was, guys. In terms of when this season is over and we look back on it, I don't think anyone else is beating Wisconsin 42-10. No one in the Big Ten, which is a good league, but no one in the Big Ten is going to beat Wisconsin like Alabama did today. At the same time, there were certainly things that Alabama needs to improve on going down the street. There were some things I don't think Alabama did great today, but overall, real impressive performance.
I just think that's college football. I just think that there's going to be hard pressed. I mean, to leave a game and say there's nothing to work on. I think we might have saw it in Kalen DeBoer's first game. If we were ever going to have a game where we said, hell, there's nothing to work on, I think it was Kalen DeBoer's game. And as I watch football around the country, even at 11 a.m., I mean, we're seeing South Carolina is up on LSU, and they lost their starting quarterback. We see, Florida State losing again. I don't even know if that's an upset at this stage. But, Andrew, just the college landscape that we're seeing to win 32 points on the road against a fun crowd, solid team. I mean, you got to kind of enjoy that moment, I think.
Yeah, and I think going into the season, there were a lot of people that were worried about this game. How good was Wisconsin going to be? How good was Alabama going to be able to perform on the road from the road struggles? And, people even mentioned, Kalen DeBoer had some road struggles at Washington. So how is Alabama going to be able to perform in that type of environment? It's not like you went up against some heavyweights at the beginning of the season. I mean, you went up against Western Kentucky. South Florida obviously gave Alabama, all they wanted all the way until late in the fourth quarter. But now you get a Big Ten test. You go on the road, 11 a.m. kickoff. I'm sure those early morning practices probably helped Alabama, throughout fall practice or throughout the August practice. But they were ready to play. We saw Wisconsin go up 3-0 early in the game. They were able to get the ball back. They missed that field goal. I thought when Deontay Lawson made that big stop on fourth down in the backfield, that was huge. That gave Alabama some momentum, and that's kind of what we saw. I talked about it earlier. The turnovers really helped Alabama gained that momentum. I think the first 3 turnovers they had in the game, they went down, or I call the turnover for the Deontay Lawson tackle on 4th down. I'll call that a turnover. But every time they were able to capitalize and go and put points on the board. And then late in that second quarter, when Wisconsin missed the field goal, Alabama drove down 2 plays, scored a touchdown, go up 21-3 at halftime. I thought that was huge.
Jimmy, what are your thoughts? Kind of a slow start. I think that's just kind of Alabama filling each other out right now, seeing what I think they're going to test that edge and see if anything's there and adjust from there. But your thoughts on what's kind of a slow start and then the pace they picked it up. But let's start with the slow start first of all.
Yeah, I don't want to feel like I'm complaining after a 42-10 win because I'm really not. But I think Alabama sort of overcomplicated things early and pretty much throughout the game. I feel if they'd have come out and just established the run with Justice Haynes and Jam Miller, I don't think Wisconsin would have stopped it all day. I think Alabama could have been very, very simple and primarily just handed it over to 26 and 22, and they would have won by a similar score. And I'm not saying that it was a mistake. Obviously, they played great. Jalen played great. I think it was one of the better games of his career, honestly, in terms of his decision-making, in terms of his ability to deliver passes downfield. All 3 touchdown passes were 10 out of 10. They were great throws, all of them. And I thought overall the decision-making was good, wasn't sacked a lot. But you could have made this game a lot easier. It could have been just 60 minutes of 26 and 22 running the ball, and I think the final score would have been something like 42-10.
But I'll devil's advocate you. What do you learn if you do that? What do you learn about your team? Because you can't do it against Georgia. You can't, there's a lot of teams you can't just do. I agree with you, though. That middle of the field was money all day. That was you had your offensive line, and we're going to get into that in a minute, so don't jump ahead. But what do you learn if you just do it basically? Because I tell you, I think what you saw when Bama, takes off the glasses like Clark Kent, I think you saw it at the end of the half because that touchdown pass to Ryan, which Joe Klatt just wanted to talk about his age, that play was brilliant. They had Jeremy lined up on the inside. Ryan was on the outside. Jeremy ran, drew the attention of the safety. Ryan actually runs a hitch. Not only does Ryan run a hitch, he drops his arm like he's watching the play, and then he leaks out. I mean, it was a beautifully designed play, and then the play to Jeremy. So I think those plays were there all day. But do you really want to use that against Wisconsin if you feel you're that much better, Andrew?
Yeah, not really. I mean, I think Alabama's. I think they've still been kind of vanilla. I don't think they've thrown out all their everything from their toolbox. They've certainly been saving that for some bigger games. I mean, Alabama was able to, in my opinion, control the line of scrimmage on the offensive side of the ball, and which was what we were certainly hoping to see with the addition of Caden Proctor back. Elijah Pritchett starting out on that right side. I thought they played extremely well, for the most part. But overall, I mean, you can't ask for a better start to the game for Alabama, going up 21-3 at halftime and then, finishing. I mean, they finished the game. I mean, what was that final score? 42-10. And you see that score 42-10, and you're thinking, okay, did they play their best game? Maybe not. There's still a lot of things you can work on, still improve on, especially in the secondary, because I think there were some some missed coverages there. But fortunately, there were some overthrown balls once again, and you're just kind of hoping, all right, once you get into that meat of the SEC schedule, you play some better quarterbacks. You better button up a little bit better before you play against those opponents.
Let's talk about the offense a little bit. I mean, you're hearing a lot, run the ball better. They were averaging like 5.7, 5.8 yards per carry until that end where they had a lot of the backups in. I thought they ran the ball fine. Some of the Milroe, I didn't love all the Milroe rushes. I don't know if that was his decision. Again, pushing that edge outside. I think he was better when he got by the way, a couple great blocks by the wide receivers who are learning to take some pride in it. But, Jimmy, your thoughts overall on the running game? You touched on it earlier, what we could have did at will, but what all did you see today?
Yeah, I thought they ran the ball extremely well with Justice and Jam. I mean, when it was a called, designed run play, I felt they gashed Wisconsin all day and were just bigger and better up front. I agree with you totally, Tim, that I think those Jalen keepers were a little puzzling in the sense that I don't know how necessary it was for Jalen to take those hits and Jalen to be so involved. Now, that said, when Jalen made a big play, I mean, there's very few players as talented as he is. I use the word dynamic all the time to describe Jalen. He truly is. I thought Joel Klatt it was huge on Milroe all day, and that's fine. I love it when the national media recognizes that, but it's so true. I mean, he's just a dynamic player. I don't know that there's any other quarterback at the highest levels of college football as dynamic as Jalen is in terms of his ability to as a runner and, of course, as a thrower. But running the ball, I thought was great. Getting those 5 guys, the 5 starters that are going to be the 5 dudes going forward today was huge. If anything, that was the biggest thing achieved today. I felt those 5 linemen developed some cohesion, blocked well. Jalen wasn't sacked often. That's a pretty good group they're going against. Again, I'm not overstating how good Wisconsin is. They're not great, but I'm telling you guys, no one's going to beat them 42-10. I mean, they will be a 7-5, 8-4, even with the backup quarterback. I haven't heard an official prognosis on Van Dyke. I'm assuming he's out for the year. But even with Locke as their quarterback, I think they're 7-5, 8-4, Big Ten team that'll be competitive most weeks, and no one else is going to beat them like Alabama did. And I credit the run game a lot with Alabama's success today. Again, I would have gone to it more. I would have been more vanilla, as Tim pointed out, probably not doing Jalen a lot of favors playing that way. But I'm just saying, I think they could have just run up and down the field all day long with 26 and 22.
Yeah, I agree. You don't forget, Jalen's a competitor. He's a quarterback, and quarterbacks know their stats. And having the first 2 games, wasn't he the first 2 in Alabama history with 2 rushing and 2 passing? Well, he got it again in the 3rd game. I thought Jalen played fine. I do think that deep pass, sometimes he's throwing it. He's already determined it when he takes the snap. I can't say I blame him. And again, I'm going to ask Andrew this. We're going to talk about these wide receivers. And when there are questions about wide receivers, and we heard about all the great wide receiver rooms of the SEC, we probably didn't hear Alabama mentioned enough now that we're kind of seeing everybody in action, Andrew.
Yeah, and you saw more guys in action. You saw E-Man out there, Emmanuel Henderson, getting a couple of passes thrown his way. I think he was he the first catch of the game?
And he looked great. Very quick, decisive, big, athletic guy. Yeah, good call.
And so seeing him out there making some plays, obviously, we know about the other playmakers on the team, but and then late in the game, Rico Scott, freshman wide receiver out of Pennsylvania, catching a couple passes late in the game. It's a deep, talented wide receiver room, but especially, those starters, they didn't get a lot of attention because it was a lot of, guys that were being replaced and new guys that were coming in. But, Ryan Williams being 17 years old, as everyone likes to continue to say over and over and over. But guess what? He is 17 years old. You don't do this kind of stuff as a 17-year-old on the road, your first road game as a freshman in college, having that type of impact. And did you guys see him on that punt return? It seemed like he was ready to take it to all the way to the goal line. So,
first, when I saw him, I said, shit. Like, what is Ryan doing back there? But then again, you want to get these guys. You got Cole injured. You got Bach. You got some guys. You want to see them back there. I'm not sure that'll be a staple, but you kind of want to know what you got. I'm sorry to Andrew. Keep going. I'm sorry.
No, all I was going to say is, you got these first 3 games out of the way. Now you're about to get into that heart of the SEC schedule, and it starts right away in that Georgia. And we'll talk about Georgia later, but you got to have a lot of excitement and positive feeling about this wide receiver room moving forward, especially with the way that these young guys are playing early on.
Yeah, and while we got you guys and girls here, please take a second, like and subscribe to the website. We appreciate y'all being here live after the show. We're doing this after every game, win, lose, or draw, and we appreciate y'all being here. But hit like and subscribe. And again, BamaOnLine.com is where you can find us nonstop. Andrew Bone, Jimmy Stein, Joseph Hastings, our recruiting analyst, who will be in here. Young JoJo will be giving some thoughts too. We got Charlie Potter in Madison and Blake Byler. All your team stuff, all your recruiting stuff on BamaOnLine.com. And BOL roundtable, which is extremely live during a game. I think some people were posting not even watching the game based on some of the questions and observations. We get some questions like, oh, shoot, let me check. But Jimmy, let's talk about this because we've been this late. Now, I was proud of y'all for making it 14 minutes into the show before talking about Ryan Williams. I'm proud of you. I was like, this is coming. This is coming. It's hard not to talk. Andrew got excited. I got excited. But we've got to talk. We got to give credit to the offensive line. Was it 2 penalties, 2 false starts?
Sounds right. Jaden had one.
I don't know what's
4 or 5 total penalties overall.
I know Booker looked very confused how they called a false start. I think he was ready to go to people's court because he did not feel he's looking back at the thing. And he's like, what? I didn't do it. But hats off. I mean, this is the Alabama starting offensive line. Jimmy, let's start with Proctor. How do you feel he did against Wisconsin?
Extremely good. Extremely good. I didn't see live Proctor whiff on anything. I didn't see any penalties. This guy missed spring practice. I mean, he's a true sophomore. Sometimes I don't think we take into account how young true sophomores are. This is still a very young player. Missed a spring practice. New body. This is his first game at this particular size, and going up against a good team. Again, Wisconsin's not Georgia, not making them out to be Georgia, but they're a competent, good Power 4 football team with a lot of athletic guys, highly recruited guys. I thought Proctor was great. I thought Pritchett was great. Let's remember this. Elijah Pritchett in this spring and summer, let's be honest, this spring and summer, he's behind Wilkin Formby. All this Pritchett stuff lately has been Pritchett coming on. This is a kid who didn't give up. It would have been very easy for Elijah Pritchett to say, well, Formby's ahead of me. My career is over. I need to start looking for someplace else. No, he put his head down. He improved. He's now the starting right tackle, played the vast majority of today's game, and I thought played really well. Really commend him for just getting better. And I think these are the 5 guys going forward, and they're going to give Alabama a chance to win every week.
Andrew, your thoughts, not only but we talked about Proctor, we talked about just how good the unit looked collectively. Because again, I think there's no doubt Bama could have came out, Nick Saban, 2011, and they could have rushed for 400 yards in this game pretty comfortably. But how well they protected, that was a very clean pocket. Again, Wisconsin's not going to be Georgia's defense, but it's also a pretty good defense, pretty good solid group that's been competitive this year.
Yeah, and obviously, the big news was watching Elijah Pritchett out there starting out at right tackle and having a pretty good game. I watched him pretty closely, and I thought that there was one play that Milroe went around the end, and Pritchett misses kind of his second level block, missed the linebacker. The linebacker made a big play on Milroe in the backfield, but for the most part, I thought Pritchett played extremely well. I thought that interior offensive line, which I think in all of our opinions is probably the best interior offensive line in college football. I thought they had their way with Wisconsin's defensive front, but getting Proctor back, that line is going to continue to get better. I mean, you get all 5 of those guys, especially if Pritchett's going to be the guy moving forward. You get some continuity within that group. You get you get Proctor back healthy. Now that he's out there, you get Tyler Booker back in his spot at left guard. This could be a really, really talented, good group moving forward. And they're going to have their big test in a couple of weeks. But going up to Wisconsin, playing in that type of environment, playing together, having a lot of success, especially in that rush attack with Milroe, Jam. Justice I was kind of surprised. Justice Haynes got a few good carries early in the game. I think he only ended up with 2 carries for 17 yards, but luckily they didn't need him as much because Jalen was able to make so many explosive plays. But a lot of that also had to do with Alabama getting the ball in Wisconsin territory on all those turnovers.
Yeah, so you get that big game out of the way, live crowd, fun game. I know the Alabama people there were having a good time. With everything that was going on. Let's address Michael Fields here. He's got a hot take. He's describing the worst defense in the history of college sports, in my opinion. Like that team is 0-3, right? Or their offense is scoring 65 points.
Alabama's given up 2 touchdowns in 12 quarters.
Now, I think there's some truth there, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. Red Morgan got burned today. I mean, you saw him come up on that run not far after that. Um, but I think that's part of it is his aggression. I think that when any kind of fake he's going to go for, anything he sees in front of him, but that's also his nature, and it's also he's a true freshman. I mean, they average 3.5 rushing yards today a carry. Let me find that. 3.6 rushing yards today a carry against a really good defensive line. I mean, against a good offensive line. I think they did a good job. They meat hooked them. There's a lot of meat on that Wisconsin line. And again, I think the blown coverage is something you have to watch. And those stop the run is odd because it feels like once a game, Alabama has a 17-play drive against them. And I think that's the effect. It was a long drive. I mean, how many plays was that touchdown drive they had?
17,
I lost count.
Yep.
I lost count at 15.
17 or 18, yeah.
Yeah. So also, I do think the pass rush is going to come when they need it. You don't want to be blitzing all the three teams they played so far. Let's talk about some individual performances. Who wants to talk about Ryan? Anybody? All right, Jimmy, I'm going to let you talk. Andrew's already talked about him. Talk about Ryan, what he did, the tag team with him and Jeremy Bernard, and just your thoughts on, that inside-outside duo that they've got right there.
It would be different. I mean, we talked about Ryan for so long. I've mentioned so many times. I think I've talked about Ryan out loud every day of my life since he was in the 10th grade. And you guys that are covering recruiting probably more often than me. But, what's so impressive about Ryan today, guys, it's not like he's one of these freshmen that is just a physical freak. He's not 6'6". He doesn't run a 4.2. He doesn't have these physical abilities that are otherworldly. You know what he is? He's a pro. He's a pro. He came out of the womb a pro. He does the little things at wide receiver, the dip of the shoulder, the route, the hands. He's just such a natural wide receiver. He's like Devontae. This is the best way to describe it, guys. Devontae Smith, I'd describe the same way. He's Devontae Smith. But Devontae probably wasn't this good until maybe late in his sophomore year, early in his junior year. Ryan's like ahead of Devontae, where Devontae was. I mean, he's the same type guy, similar skills, just maturity as a player. He's like ahead of that pace. That's just absurd. He can really be one of the greats in this sport as he gets older and as he physically matures. Again, the little things, it's not just the speed.
All right. I just wanted you to get it out of your system.
No,
it's once a show, you're going to.
I want to do a whole Ryan Williams podcast.
I think you've done it every week. I told y'all last week, there's no hot take that Ryan's good. I just like to hear y'all get excited. I get excited. I'm not going to lie. Y'all get me excited, but obviously Ryan, to see everything he is, as good as he is. We had a question earlier, who's better, Ryan or Jeremiah Smith? I mean, it's a great discussion. Jeremiah Smith's great. It's a great wide receiver class in itself. But let's talk about Josh Cuevas. Josh gets him a 37-yard touchdown. We owe Josh some love.
Quietest commitment of all time, too.
That's the most uncomfortable commitment we've ever had. I'll recap it for everybody. We were in the middle of trying to report that Keon Saab had transferred to Alabama, and we had the news on Friday, but they were like, wait. Well, Monday we're ready to drop the news, and they're like, not yet. We're not there yet. And I saw him in a damn Alabama workout video. He was in class at Alabama, but they wanted to make this announcement. So we finally get Keon to say, okay, we're going with it. It's on. And so we get the Keon out there. And then in the middle of the night, Josh Cuevas tweets out he's going to Bama. And it's not the normal edits we're used to seeing. It's basically a kid with a crayon covered. It's just so basic. I think he did it himself. And we really couldn't get an answer. We thought he was a PWO, but we quickly heard Josh was going to be a guy, and he got him a 37-yard touchdown. Wasn't that easy of a catch? I mean, he had to get some paws on it. So, absolutely good. Let's talk a little bit about the running game. Jam Miller, the running backs. Jam Miller continues to be a guy that I think can get his whenever he wants to. I mean, 9 rushes for 71 yards. Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, you had 140 yards, 146 total yards rushing between Jalen and Jam today. So, I mean, the rushing attack was on point. I mean, I thought Jam Miller. Yeah, I know that we're all excited about Justice Haynes, and that's kind of been the talk of the offseason, but Jam Miller is a outstanding running back. He's got that juice. He's got that fire. He can hit the hole hard, break tackles. I mean, that guy has got some great speed. It is even though Haynes didn't get as many carries today, I mean, that is as good of a, duo in the backfield. And then you add in the running ability of Jalen Milroe. I mean, it's got to be one of the best, if not the best, rushing attack in college football. And everybody's going to talk about Ohio State and their duo, but man, that running back trio in Tuscaloosa is very talented, and they're going to be great, the rest of the season. We saw what they were able to do with this offensive line today. I think, even though it's just Wisconsin, I think they're going to be able to do some similar things like that throughout the season.
Yeah, and we hated to see, we've got a few questions here. We don't have the answer on Richard Young. We hated to see the injury. I have no idea what that is. For the few people asking, Charlie Potter will be talking to the staff. We do think that Quay Russaw is going to be okay. We don't know how okay, but he's going to miss some time, I would guess. Maybe an MCL sprain. I mean, that's part of it. Malachi looked to us like a possible concussion. And again, you never know exactly what this is till you get him in there. It's not anybody's being evasive, but we saw a play the other day with Jamison Williams for the Lion. He looked like he was out for the year to me. He looked like he was out to the year for the Detroit Lions, and he was out one play. And then of course you saw the Tua play where he looked like he was all right walking off the field, but then he turned around and had a concussion. So we don't know, but that's something Charlie Potter, Blake Byler, they'll be doing some reporting and catching up, and maybe the coaches will talk on that. And one more time, you guys, while we got you, we appreciate you joining us live. We got some good football games going on. I felt like the best games were at 11 a.m., but if you get a chance, hit that subscribe button. And again, you can always find us at BamaOnLine.com. Andrew with bad jokes, Jimmy with his Taylor Swift recommendation, and Joseph Hastings.
Ryan Williams show. I'm going to do a whole show on Ryan and Taylor.
You do it every week. I have wait, not Taylor. Shit, we're not adding her in here. Good Lord.
I want a Ryan and Taylor podcast.
You are literally going to get banned from YouTube. I got to protect you. I got to protect Jimmy from Jimmy. All right, let's go to the defense. Let's talk a little bit over there. Andrew, give me a guy that today, whatever the case may be, who kind of made plays for you, was competitive, stood out to you, somebody you like today.
I loved Deontay Lawson. Thought he was outstanding today. The first 2 weeks of the season, and I mentioned this on the BOL roundtable the other day. I felt like we had seen a lot of people talking about Jahad Campbell throughout the season, Justin Jefferson, and rightfully so. Those guys were outstanding the first couple of weeks. We hadn't talked as much, even though he's had just as big of an impact, of Deontay Lawson, and he made some really big plays in this game. Had that big stop on fourth down to help Alabama get the ball, go down, score, go up 7-3. Then he had that forced fumble in the third quarter. So I thought he had his best game of the season today. Also had a tip pass. So props to Deontay Lawson. Thought he played extremely well on the road, and it was good to see.
That was not a timer for you to stop, for the record, Andrew. That's one of my.
All right, you're done.
Andrew rushed off. That was an accident. Jimmy Stein, give us a guy that struck your attention. Anybody, somebody just caught your eye today.
Malachi Moore and LT Overton.
No, you cannot cheat. You do it every damn week.
I would have said Overton.
Shit, I have LT. Everybody in the thing said it. You chose no.
1A and 1B.
No, there's no 1A and 1B. This is choosing your wife. No, you've already chosen. LT's off the table. You missed the layup.
Chose my wife and Taylor.
No, Taylor, you can never have both. You're lucky to have one. So
that's true. And yeah.
Go ahead. I got LT.
I'll go LT Overton.
No. LT's gone. Okay. You talk about your pick.
Okay.
Go.
Oh, I'll talk about Malachi. One thing about Malachi is right place, right time. I think coach on the field undersells how athletic he is. He's actually a great athlete. Again, what I like about Malachi best is he's in the right place at the right time in the pass game and the run game. He's just so present. The turnover, it wasn't an accident. I mean, that's Malachi Moore knocking the ball out. Great player. I hope he's back for Georgia. He's not the best player on the defense. I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys he is or anybody. He's not. You know what he is, though? He might be the most valuable player on this defense. Gets everybody lined up. He's a calming presence and an underrated playmaker. Alabama needs Malachi Moore on the field. I hope he's back for Georgia.
Yeah, Overton to me was the guy. And I tell you, it was some of the plays he didn't make that stood out the most to me because he's so competitive. And I think he's a guy, and we talked about this when he got to Bama. He's had a weird, career. Number one player in the country in his class, jumps to the class ahead of him, reclassifies. Still a top 10 player, goes to Texas A&M, heavy NIL deal. And to get all those guys they paid for on the field, they had him at linebacker. They had him completely out of position. But this guy, to me, is an NFL guy. We talked about it being his money year, right? This is his money year, and I think he's playing and he's getting into that money. We had a pretty good question here. I'll let you guys address it. Is the defense, Levi Raker wants to know, is the defense blitzing and we're not great, or are we playing a vanilla defense into Georgia? Andrew, I'll let you touch on that.
Yeah, I think that it's kind of a tough question just because we hadn't really seen a lot of outside pressure, especially in this game. I don't know if it was necessarily, the goal to get a lot of outside pressure because we saw Wisconsin running the ball a lot and they made some quick passes. But I do think we're going to see a lot more blitzing, a lot more, activity in that Georgia game coming up. They don't want to give too much away. And you have, at the Western Kentucky game, 63-0. South Florida game, a little bit of a different type of game. And then you have this game where Alabama just kind of, they were able to kind of do what they wanted to do, cruise to a 42. Even though it was Alabama looked a lot better this week than they did last week, even though the scores were about the same. But I think, over the course of the next 2 weeks, Alabama, getting ready for this Georgia game, I don't think they've shown a lot. I think they're going to show a lot more. I think Quay Russo getting hurt early in the game, that certainly hurt them a little bit as far as, physical pass rusher. As you mentioned, Tim, I don't think he's going to be back right away. I think he's going to probably miss a little bit of time. I don't think it's going to be a whole season, but I do think it's going to be probably tough seeing him come off the field, off his own, with help, not being able to put any weight on that, the left foot. He's probably going to be out at least a couple weeks.
Yeah, I agree. Jimmy, you got some thoughts there?
Yeah, that's a really good question because it made me think, like that's a really good question. I do think we're a better pass rushing team than what they've showed so far. And I think Andrew's exactly right about why you're not going to show everything you got before you play Georgia. But at the same time, I think it's fair to say that I don't believe this will be a great pass rushing football team. I think they'll be good. They'll be good enough. Will it be super elite? Probably not.
I don't think they've spent a lot of time. Again, they had a few times they wanted to bring guys off the edge. That's how Malachi got hurt when they wanted to stop the run. So I think that potential's there. Again, I don't know if I got a bunch of, blowout games the last 3 games. I know South Florida was different, but the first and third game, there was no scenario where you need to be tipping Georgia any kind of blitz, any kind of trick play. You might as well be screaming, run a double reverse as far as I'm concerned. I think the base defense has been fine. I think we'll know more. I think we'll know more to those questions after the Georgia game because I think whatever they've got, you're going to throw at Georgia, who's the number 1 team in the country. So whatever you've got, you want to throw it now because I can tell you now, if you're throwing it against South Florida, Kirby Smart's a pretty damn good football coach, right? He's going to be able to iron that out and figure it out. Jimmy, we're going to let you go and bring in Joseph Hastings. We appreciate you as always. Again, you can find Jimmy Stein at BamaOnLine.com. He'll have some coverage, and we'll be on the message board, the BamaOnline Roundtable. So good seeing you, Jimmy. And we're going to welcome in Joseph.
See you, Jimmy.
What's up, Joseph?
What's going on, guys? How you doing?
Good, man. Good. We're gonna bring you in here for a little bit. Good win, good game. Little Alabama route. I think some had it more closer contest than I saw. But give us some thoughts on the game in Alabama in general. Just tell us what you saw today.
Yeah, I came away really impressed by Alabama's first road game. In Kalen DeBoer's era. I thought it was going to kind of play out the way the USF game ended up playing out. A little bit of a closer game into the second half. Bama pulls away late, but I mean, it was all Bama for the most part. I think it is unfortunate that we didn't get to see Alabama play against a team led by Tyler Van Dyke instead against Braden Locke, just because you want to see a little bit of an increase in the level of quarterback competition heading into that Georgia game. So far this year, they've played TJ Finley, Brown from USF, and then also Braden Locke here. And it just, in terms of beating you deep and being able to take advantage of maybe some weaknesses or some breakdowns in the secondary that we've seen the quarterbacks so far haven't been able to. But overall, I came away real impressed by Alabama's performance, both on offense and defense. Jalen Milroe stole the show, in my opinion. I said it last week, this team goes as Jalen Milroe goes. His mentality, the way he leads his team, they kind of follow him. And, he got really comfortable there, especially in the second quarter and beyond. And I think he did some really good things passing the ball and running the ball. And the coaching staff showed some trust in him too, especially at the end of that second quarter, going into halftime, 40-something seconds left. They have 3 timeouts. You think, okay, maybe they'll be comfortable taking an 11-point lead into halftime. No. He ends up getting them down into the end zone in 2 plays. So, yeah, just a solid game overall heading into the bye week.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit. We're recruiting guys. Let's talk a little bit about some of these freshmen who played, or not just freshmen, newcomers. Because I mean, you've got Parker Brailsford. We don't talk nearly enough about Parker Brailsford. I mean, we don't even mention snaps or anything. The jokes have ran out, which is a damn good sign, because we spent a lot of time dealing with that joke and during the season and the off season. But Parker's been fantastic. LT Overton's been a huge guy. Andrew, give me a couple of guys. Give me 2 or 3 guys, newcomers, regardless of classification, freshmen, transfers. Give me a couple guys that have stood out to you.
Yeah, I mean, as far as some transfers, LT Overton's probably been, the guy that has been the most impressive, because we didn't even know if he was going to be a starter, back 4 months ago. I feel like he's really kind of taken that next step as far as being in that bandit position. I think he's been outstanding throughout the year for Alabama, and is going to continue to get better. There were high expectations for him coming out of high school, as you mentioned earlier. Did he live up to those expectations right away at Texas A&M? Everybody always expects 5-stars to come onto the field, make a big impact as soon as they arrive on campus, and it doesn't always happen like that. Overton was out of position. He was able to get to Alabama. And I think once he arrived at Alabama with the previous staff, they were still trying to figure out, all right, he's been playing linebacker. What are we going to do with him now that he's here at Alabama? And then this new staff comes in, perfect position, bandit. This is a guy that's been making a big impact these first few games of the season. Then Keon Saab, I feel like he's done outstanding. Had those 2 picks early in the year, but he's been great in run support, been great in pass coverage, and I think he's going to continue to make a big impact there. So those are the 2 transfers, in my opinion, that I felt like have really done well in all 3 games of the season so far.
Joseph, we haven't talked to you really about Ryan. We talked about you in week 2, a little bit about Ryan, and just, you can't talk about it more than Jimmy, but Jimmy loves some Ryan. But it's just some thoughts on Ryan and, anybody else, that's kind of stood out to you, because we covered a lot of these guys, and this was a highly valued, highly recruited class, but we're seeing a ton of guys get playing time.
Yeah, so I'm not going to really fault the national media for bringing up that Ryan Williams is 17 years old all the time. I mean, it's spectacular. You don't see 17-year-olds walk into college football and do what he does. He's leading the team in receiving yards and receiving touchdowns. So that's something that I'm fine with the national media talking about. But what I think needs to be mentioned as much, if not more, is that he didn't participate in the spring. You didn't have the hype game of the hype of the 8A game, or the anticipation of seeing him in spring practice, and all that hype building up from the national media landscape, as we saw with someone like a Jeremiah Smith. I know that conversation's been happening a lot, like we mentioned in the show, but he didn't have that spring buildup, and he came in right away in the summer, and you heard instantly about him. and how dynamic of a receiver he is. And, I've spoken with Amari Saab and Xavier Saab, younger brothers of Keon Saab, and they've talked with their brother about how Ryan is always open in practice, how he's always making plays. So yeah, Ryan's doing his thing as we kind of expected, just a little bit earlier than I think most of us anticipated. But you saw Xavier Brown out there. He's getting starts, and you see Jalen Mbakwe returning punts, even though Cole Adams injured, and getting in on the field too in the secondary. Some of those freshmen, we're going to see some of those guys also probably start to emerge throughout the season. But just seeing the younger guys and how many players are getting on the field for Alabama, especially on defense. The rotation has been really encouraging to see, especially from a recruiting standpoint. You want to see that you're going to be able to get on the field, have a chance to get on the field early, and that's what Bama's showcasing.
Yeah, I think overall, I mean, let's look at some statistics here. Since we're statistic guys, we're really not, but let's look at some of the game statistics today, how it shook out for, Alabama individual performances. Obviously, Jalen Milroe, 12 of 17, 196 yards, 3 touchdowns. I thought he did a really good job. He's always going to be that guy that swings at a pitch he shouldn't on 3-1 that he knows is probably a ball. He's always going to throw that thing deep. And again, they're working Caleb into, Caleb Odom, another freshman, Emmanuel Henderson. They got a lot of guys they can work in there to get them involved. But I thought he had a big game, 14 rushes, 75 yards, totals five touchdowns. Thought he did a good job. And of course, Jam Miller running the ball. But defensively, we didn't even mention, this is Bama's defense had such good performance. We didn't even really talk about Jihad Campbell. Joseph, kind of talk about Jihad. I mean, you covered him when he was committed to Clemson, then flipped to Bama, and, slow start here and then worked his way. And, seemingly he led the team in tackle. He's really seeming to find himself.
Yeah, he's a big physical imposing force there. He when he hits you, it kind of feels like through the screen you can feel it as well. Jihad is just really taking up that mantle, helping lead Alabama alongside Deontay Lawson with those linebackers, and I think they've done an exceptional job, in their own part, being able to collapse on running backs, be able to force some pressure when needed to, when they send some of those blitz packages. Yeah, I think Jihad is, and I saw it in high school. I saw him at the Under Armour camp in Orlando. I walked up to him, and he already had that physical presence before he even started college. It was just about learning the game. I think he's really done that, and he's leading the team. And I even spoke with a recent LSU commitment, Jaden Breaker, about Jihad. He says Jihad is the guy that he looks at. He watches his film and he studies him. So he's somebody that's really emerged this year.
Yeah, I mean, today's an interesting day in football. LSU just scored with under 2 minutes left to take the lead on South Carolina. And I'll tell you something, if Lenore Sellers hadn't went down, LSU was in a world of trouble. In South Carolina, it's tough to play in Columbia. FSU, I've got 6 friends texting me, Florida State fans. I have no idea why I have 6 Florida State friends. I got to lose 2 of them this week, who are like, congratulations on not hiring Mike Norvell, or thanks for sending us these guys and I told them, like, a lot of those guys weren't going to play the Florida State transfers. They weren't expected to play at Alabama this year. They've made them into plug and play guys, and they're getting good playing time. They were in the portal for a reason, and it was the right decision.
Hey, Tim, I just want to give a shout out to you and I. We both picked Memphis. We'll wait till the LSU game finishes. We both picked Memphis and LSU. We got that going on the on BamaOnLine.com. We have our weekly predictions. So another great reason to subscribe and see who ends up coming out victorious at the end there. But I wasn't really too shocked with Memphis beating FSU. That team, how you can't really measure it statistically. Sometimes it's just the vibes feel off with the program. The vibes have felt off ever since, they didn't make it to the college football playoff, and the way things ended against Georgia in the bowl game. So, it's not, and I don't even know if next week is a guarantee for them either at this point.
Before we get out of here, let's get some thoughts. I mean, we're 3 games into this. We're at the break. Are you where we thought we'd be at this stage, Andrew? What we've seen, you're not having finished. You don't even know what I'm going to say.
I know. I'm ready. I know. I'm just ready to say what I'm going to say.
Okay.
You got to hear the question. Well, what are your thoughts on 3 games into Kalen DeBoer, Alabama, where they're at, where they're going? This is where you wanted to be going to Georgia game, or did you want to see more up to this point?
I'm just, glad we're at the point where Alabama fans are upset of a 42-10 win. That's what I'm excited about, because that means there's still a lot of room for improvement, and you're 3-0. You could be 0-3 right now, just like Florida State. But guess what? You are 3-0 going into the Georgia game. That's exactly where you wanted to be. And guess what? You got an off week. You can correct some things. You can get better. You can get some guys healthy. Didn't like seeing some of the injuries today. I think, a couple of those guys will be back for the Georgia game. But I think Alabama is exactly where they want to be. You have a lot of new things about this team. You got new coaching staff, new schemes, new players. You got to get these guys comfortable playing with each other. Yeah, you can go through spring practice, you can go through fall camp and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of new faces that are playing together for the first time on the field in meaningful games, and they're 3-0 right now. There's some things still, like I said, to fix, to correct on, but you got to feel good 3-0 right now with this Alabama team with that big win in Wisconsin. Wisconsin may not be a great team, but going to Madison, 11 a.m., winning the game 42-10, that's an impressive victory.
Joseph?
Yeah, I think it's just good that Alabama got tested against USF because, today wasn't really too much, especially with Tyler Van Dyke going out. And you've got Georgia coming in, and they haven't really been, we'll see what happens with Kentucky tonight, though. Recent history suggests that Georgia should win this game pretty handily, but Georgia won't pretty much won't have, too many of those tight situations and adversity outside of that first half against Clemson to go off of. So, there's going to be a lot of momentum riding in with Georgia. Alabama knows, though, last time they played at home, it's a 14-13 game against USF going into the fourth quarter. I think that's going to put them just a little bit more on awareness than they were already going to be against Georgia, a big-time matchup. So, yeah, I think all things said, though, you got to like where you're at 3-0 heading into the Georgia game.
I think I'm most surprised or maybe disappointed that following the South Florida game with so many mistakes, they see a relatively clean game, and you're having to pinpoint 3 or 4 plays out there. This was a much cleaner game than last week. And again, I think this starting 5 offensive linemen is, if they're playing against South Florida, I think that's 40. The final score would have been without the 14-13 hassle in it.
Four penalties. 4 penalties.
I mean, you can't.
I feel like we hadn't seen that. I feel like Alabama's had 10 plus. They probably haven't, but I feel like Alabama has had 10 plus penalties a game for the last 2 or 3 years. This was about and as you said, Tim, this is about the cleanest game that we've seen from that Alabama team, and especially on the offensive front.
Thank you, Kathy Wood. And yes, if you get a chance, please like and subscribe. I know that later on there'll be a bunch more people watching. The post-game shows are pretty popular. We snuck 4 in here. I don't know if you're ever going to get to see team expert Charlie Potter, because we don't like Charlie. We do like Charlie, but he has to go do the interviews and everything right after the game. But I agree with you guys. I think 3-0, you're happy, you have a win, you get a lot of playing time. There's a bright future. I think the cliche, and I'll say it 20 times this year, there's always something to work on. I just don't think, there's not. I mean, I don't know many situations where you just drop the mic and say, perfect, it's over, I'm done. You know what I mean? Whether that be your marriage or cutting the grass or, a football game. So certainly there's going to be mistakes. But I do think this was a step in the right direction, because, what was the question all week? Is Proctor ready? Is Proctor rusty? Is Pritchard? Yeah, he did fine. I think he did fine. I think he looked the part. So, again, we appreciate y'all being here. Y'all make sure you tune in Tuesday. We're going to have our big show. That is your chance to see Charlie Potter, Jimmy Stein, Blake Byler. I got it, Andrew. Andrew Bone, looking freshly shorn like a sheep in the summer. He's trimmed that beard down. I didn't recognize him. And Joseph Hastings, who's actually in the same spot today that he was the other day.
I'm going to be honest. I had the wrong guard on.
I knew that was it. I knew you shaved that.
Oops.
Joseph, he told me he's trying to do it on purpose. But thank you, Alabama fans. Roll Tide. We'll see you next week. And again, you can find us on the BamaOnLine.com roundtable, and we look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you, guys.
Joseph, say goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.
I'm always waiting. Y'all can't get this right worth the crap. Joseph, say goodbye. Joseph, say goodbye.
I said thank you, everyone. Thank you for tuning in, giving a like.